Ambassador Mike Huckabee, thank you for joining me. As you know, there are ongoing talks between the U.S. and Iran taking place right now. The Ayatollah Khomeini came into power in 1979 and committed the original sin of taking 52 U.S. embassy staff hostage. And for 47 years, this regime has been chanting death to America while having the blood of Americans on their hands. What is the Trump administration's understanding of the nature of this regime, and what do you believe is hoped to be achieved through negotiations?
Well, I think the hope for negotiations is that maybe a war could be averted. Whether that's going to happen, I don't know. It's hard to say. The Iranians have never shown any sense of civilized behavior in 47 years when it comes to being reasonable. They've funded proxy groups around the world. Many Americans have been murdered because of it. Thousands of others across the planet are the victims of Iranian assassination attempts, including President Trump. So I don't think that anybody is, wanting to think that Iran is going to quickly fold, but they have a chance, and this is their last chance, and they're going to have to decide, do they want to survive? Because I think it's been very clear from President Trump, they're not going to have a nuclear weapon, they're not going to have enriched uranium, and they're not going to be able to store a large measure of ballistic missiles, the likes of which they are using to kill people. So it's their decision. But if they choose not to negotiate in good faith, not to come to a conclusion about their future, then their future may get decided for them.
How important is the non-nuclear file to your U.S. negotiators right now, to our negotiators? How important are the terror proxies and the Iranian oppression of their own people? How important are those other issues?
Well, they're pretty important. In fact, they're real important. The president has said that the torture and the murder of many of their citizens, we don't even know how many. Everyone thinks it's at least 6,000, 7,000. Some reports up to 35,000 people that have been murdered by the Iranian government and the regime. The tragedy of that is that the Iranian people deserve better. They're wonderful people. It's not that the entire population is crazy, but they have a government that's crazy. And that government for 47 years has been saying death to America, along with death to Israel. One of the challenges we have, Ellie, is that we've got a lot of Americans who think that this doesn't have anything to do with us. And they really have not been paying attention for 47 years. If the Iranians had a long-range ballistic missile, I assure you they would have already lit it up against the United States. They shoot them off as far as they can go. This is an aggressive nation. One of their proxies, Hezbollah, is in 12 Central and South American nations, including Venezuela. Think about that. Americans may think they're far away from this. They're not very far at all. It's in the Western Hemisphere. And we don't know how many Hezbollah agents may have slipped across the U.S. border during the time when Joe Biden opened the border up and didn't take names of anybody coming in. Are they sleeper cells ready to be ordered to attack and do terrorist activities in the United States? We don't really know. So this threat is global. It always has been. It's just that a lot of people pretended that they didn't listen very carefully to what the Iranians were saying.
Well, Ambassador, you bring up a good point, and as somebody who was born in Iran, I couldn't agree with you more about the seriousness and the global nature of the Iranian threat. However, some would argue that in Washington, there's been almost a traumatic response to America's history in intervention in Iraq, and there's almost an allergy to the notion of regime change. What's your response to that, and in particular in terms of Trump administration policy?
I think the president certainly is not for nation building. He does not think it is the responsibility of the United States to go in and take down a nation and then take over the building of that nation back up. That was a big mistake that the U.S. made in Iraq and Afghanistan. It didn't work out very well. I think what President Trump is looking at is how can he help the Iranian people move for their own future? That's what really he's been talking about, is that they have a right to self-determine. He said the same thing about people in Gaza. They ought to be able to leave if they want to, stay if they want to. The people of Iran ought to be able to have some say in whether they're going to remain thirsty and hungry. This regime has taken the money that would have built a great country, and instead they used it to finance terror activities around the world. And when their people speak up against it, they get murdered, they get shot. I know people here in Jerusalem. One gentleman in particular has family in Iran. 4 members of his family have been shot during this process. They're still alive, thank God. But that just gives you some idea that if every family in Iran has people who have been shot or chased or put in prison over the protest, it's probably more extensive than the reported numbers really say. And I think the world has a responsibility to stand with these people who just simply want to have their lives given back to them. I can remember, Ellie, when the Persian culture was the most enviable culture on the planet in fashion, music, medicine, art, antiquities. There was just nothing quite like the Iranian culture and the magnificence of the Iranian people. I have a feeling that there are a number of them, even younger ones who weren't there 47 years ago, who would love to see a revival of the nation that Iran once was and that it could be again.
Well, yeah, and again, Ambassador, as someone who was born in Iran, I agree with you incredibly. So, looking at the youth from Iran, they very much are hoping for American intervention right now, and this is something that we hear on social media a lot. People asking for President Trump and the United States right now to intervene. So, my last question on the topic of Iran is, how optimistic are you that the Iranian regime will take this branch of negotiation and the ability to salvage their country right now?
I try to remind people that, I was America first from the beginning, but America first, and Donald Trump's the only one who gets to really define what it is, but it's never been America only. America first simply means that all of us, me included, put America first. That means that our primary interest is what's good for America. In this case, what's good for America is the partnership that we have with Israel. They reflect our values. They reflect our core of Western civilization, but we also share intelligence, military hardware, many things with the Israelis that are mutually beneficial, sometimes even more beneficial to America than maybe America is beneficial to Israel, though a lot of Americans would never understand that. Big picture is this. We have an obligation, first and foremost, to our American citizens, but there are 700,000 American citizens living in Israel. So part of the reason that Israel matters to America is because there's so many of Americans who are here, more than in any other country outside the U.S. other than Mexico, which is pretty remarkable if you think that there are more Americans in Israel than there are in Canada, the UK, Spain, Italy, France, Japan, Germany, any of our larger allies. So you bet it matters, but it matters also because every enemy of Israel is an enemy of the United States. Whoever is targeting Israel to take them down has always said that if they are able to annihilate Israel, America is next.
Couldn't agree with you more, sir. Ambassador Huckabee, you are the first Baptist minister, and I believe Christian Zionist, to be appointed as a United States ambassador to Israel. How do you view the U.S.-Israel relationship, especially in light of what seems to be a potentially growing neo-isolationist camp within the Republican Party itself?
Ellie, I hope they do it. I'll be very honest. There's a selfish part of me that says the reason I hope they do it, because if they don't, and we have another war, I'm going to be right in the middle of it. I'd just soon pass. Did that last year, saw it all, experienced it, don't really want to go through it again. But on the other hand, if that's what it's going to take to free the people of Iran and give them their future and let them let go of a very, very violent past and get rid of this regime, if that's what it's going to take to get rid of the proxies that are conducting terror activities all over the world, then it may be the only thing that will bring some realignment and stability, not just to the Middle East, but really to the whole planet.
Are you concerned, though, to see some of the statistics which point to perhaps less support for Israel among American youth and even from within the conservative movement?
I really am, and I hope it's more loud than it is large, but it is of great concern to me because it shows that people are getting their news and their information from TikTok or maybe from Twitter rather than getting it from decent, viable research that comes from understanding what the issues are and how it would affect America if Israel were to collapse. For that matter, how does it affect America if Iran gets stronger? How does it affect America if all these other Gulf states get attacked by Iran? There's a real naivete among people who say, none of that matters to me. It doesn't affect me. It's like saying my neighbor's house is burning down, but it won't affect me. Well, that is until the embers of that burning home come to your roof and burn your house down. And people are just needing to wake up and understand that we don't have to fight other people's wars. Israel has never asked us to fight a war for them. Americans have never put one boot on the ground to fight for Israel. So it's not that we are engaging in someone else's problem. It is that we are recognizing that the threat to Israel is also a threat to the United States and to every citizen in it.
Ambassador, in perhaps a historical first during the 12-day war, President Trump shared with the world your text message to him in which you told the president that God had spared his life so that he could become the, quote, most consequential president in a century, maybe ever. And it seems your message indeed got through to President Trump. Why do you believe that is?
You know, it was a personal message. I never thought it would go anywhere other than to him. And I got a response almost immediately when I sent it, which, I thought, well, that's good. He's really paying attention to what I sent him. And he said, thank you. I've read it over and again, and it really has touched me. And the next thing I know, within a few minutes after I received that from him, I started getting responses and hits on my text and email from people I hadn't heard from in years from all over the world. And they said, I just read what you sent to President Trump. And I'm scratching my head saying, how did you read it? I didn't send it to you. I sent it to him, and I didn't post it anywhere. And then I realized he had posted it on social media, and it had gone viral. It was a personal message to him, but it really was to express my confidence that I didn't need to give him advice. I did believe, and still do believe, that God spared him for, as Esther would say, such a time as this. But I also believe that he would reach deep within his own heart. He would find the right decision. I wasn't trying to tell him or urge him or advise him. He didn't need that. He just needed to know that those of us who worked for him and were serving at his pleasure did so with great confidence in his judgment. And I feel like that judgment that we believed in and our confidence in it was well placed because he made the right decision at the right moment, and it did have consequential effects.
Oh, absolutely. It was a historic moment, and I remember it quite well myself, the virality of it all. Ambassador, if we could turn to Gaza, when you look at the plans for New Gaza revealed at Davos recently by former senior advisor to the president and son-in-law Jared Kushner, what do you think the Trump vision for Gaza is, and is the expectation to achieve this vision within this Trump presidency?
It could be. It's going to take some time to see the vision that Jared Kushner put forth, but I think it's an important vision because some people would say, oh, if Gaza would just end up being a bunch of tents sitting on top of rubble. Well, I don't think anybody aspires that would be the greatest aspiration for its future. So the idea of giving the people of Gaza a sense of hope and optimism, honestly, to say this is what you could have been all along. I've often said Gaza could have been Singapore, but Hamas turned it into Haiti. What a shame. The billions upon billions of dollars that was sent to them were squandered by Hamas to build tunnels of terror so they could murder Jews and create havoc to the world. People forget Gaza, a little place. It's the size of Las Vegas, but they built a tunnel system that's larger than the London Underground, not to move children from one school to the other or people to get to hospitals. They built that tunnel system to store weapons of destruction, to harbor people they had kidnapped, and to be able to escape the consequences of their terrorist activities. What a shame.
Yeah, absolutely. And you raise Hamas. We saw this week progress with President Trump's plan to end the Gaza war with the reopening of the Rafah crossing between the enclave and Egypt. So clearly there's a lot of progress being made, but difficult questions remain unaddressed, including whether Hamas will disarm. What are the options available to the president on that front?
I think it's fair to say the president has never wavered. He's said it over and again. Hamas will disarm, they will demilitarize, and they will have no future in Gaza. I don't think he could be more clear or more consistent than that. It'd be very difficult for me to tell you exactly how that's going to be done or when it's going to be done or who's going to do it. But I think I can say with some level of extreme confidence it will be done. If for no other reason that President Trump is not a person who offers empty threats. He makes promises and he keeps them. This is a promise. People forget that every Arab nation signed on to the peace agreement, which was historic in itself and remarkable that that happened. And Hamas agreed that they would disarm. Now all the hostages are back. The one big piece that is still left on the table to move forward is for Hamas to lay down their arms and to give up any hope that they're going to have a role in governing Gaza. Things are moving forward even without that, but there's a limit on how far they can move, and that's why I think that the time is running out and the clock is ticking, and Hamas needs to understand that the old poem, "For whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee."
Ambassador, we've also been hearing a bit of pushback from the Israelis on some of their security concerns, including which countries might be a part of security measures in Gaza. What is the Trump administration's response to Israel's concerns?
Well, they're very sensitive to it. They understand that Israel has a vested interest in making sure that they never, ever have another October 7th. And the best way they can do that is not letting people amass on their borders who either supported what happened then, would support it again, or might even help carry it out if they had the opportunity. And I'm not saying that there are nations that are wanting to be part of the international stabilization force that would do it, but Israel is going to exercise its right to protect itself. And it's going to be very careful about who it thinks that really should be even near protecting the future of Gaza. There'll be some disagreement. That's normal. There'll be some negotiation to get through it. But the U.S. is certainly going to be very, very sensitive to Israel's concerns. They're not going to just brush them off, because I'm not sure that we would brush off something like October the 7th. A lot of people may not really do the math on it. But if you took October the 7th and put it in America, rather than 1,200 people being murdered, massacred, and mutilated by these savages, it would be the equivalent of losing 40,000 Americans in one day. One day. And I asked myself, what would Americans do if we'd seen 40,000 of our fellow civilians, not soldiers, civilians, butchered like that? Well, I know what happened on 9/11 when less than 3,000 were murdered. We changed everything in the whole country of what we did and how we did it. So if that's any indication, multiply that by more than 10, and you get some idea of what the reaction would be had that happened to us. So I think that being a little patient with the Israelis and understanding where they're coming from on this is something America is not only ready and able to do, but understands it must do.
And on President Trump's Board of Peace, on an almost daily basis, we're hearing about more countries joining the board. Is it meant to replace the United Nations, as some reporting seems to indicate?
No, I don't think anybody is looking at it in that regard. Now, I'm not speaking as the representative of the U.S. I'm just speaking personally. If something could be better than the UN, it probably would be a good thing for the world. That's not the point of the Board of Peace. The Board of Peace is to bring stability to Gaza and to create the framework through which Gaza can have a real future and its people can make decisions about their own personal future. Do they stay? Do they go? And if they stay, what is their role? Are they going to take jobs that will help rebuild? That's all a part of the calculus there.
And Ambassador, when we look at President Trump's first term, he upended a lot of the conventional thinking in the Middle East, from maximum pressure on Iran to the Abraham Accords. Given everything you've experienced in your first year as ambassador, what would you say is the single most important principle that should guide President Trump's Middle East policy in the rest of the term?
I think he's really outlined that it's a matter of looking for nations that want to bring normalization and a real peaceful existence, not just with Israel, but with each other. When I look at to me, one of the most admirable nations on earth, and that's the UAE. The Emiratis really are in many ways a template of how it ought to be. They have moved to a very peaceful position. They changed and created what I consider to be the most enviable curriculum for their school children, to create a real sense of what it means to live in a world and to be responsible neighbors. They built a great economy. They built an enormous partnership with Israel, and it's proven to be very lucrative for them financially. But also, think about the cultural exchanges that have happened between Israel and the Emiratis. I admire them so much. I can't even begin to tell you, because I feel like that they took a big risk. There was a lot of criticism toward them. But I think day after day and week after week, they prove that the idea of living in a neighborhood where they don't threaten Israel, they respect Israel, and they end up with the respect that Israel gives to them. And everybody wins and nobody loses. I think that's the world President Trump would love to see expand and grow and become really the model for the rest of the world.
And so how much of the Trump administration's foreign policy priority would you say those peace deals and normalization in the Middle East is?
It's a big part of it. This is an area of the world that has seen very little peace, even in my lengthy lifetime. And for the president to look at this area and see the same mistakes being made over and over, one thing I love about him, he doesn't just say, oh, okay, let's keep doing what we're doing, because it's failed miserably, so let's do it again. He says, it's failed miserably, let's quit doing that. Let's do something completely unconventional. That's why I think he's such an effective president. But he also has his eye on China. He has his eye on Russia, Ukraine. He's already been in the middle of negotiating an end to nearly 8 wars across the planet. Some may wonder, how does he have time and energy to do all of these things? But he's really passionate about it. And I don't think people who have, maybe they haven't been around him, they don't understand that this is genuine on his part. He does not care for war. He does not like to see people, particularly innocent civilians, end up becoming the collateral damage in a war. He will do everything he can to avoid it. But he also, I will say to people, he is President Trump. He is not President Chump, and he will not be played a fool. So these countries that think they can just tinker with him and delay him and play games with him, I wouldn't recommend it. It doesn't end well.
Yes, and I think that the experience of Maduro in Venezuela is certainly testament to that. If we can pivot to Israel's north for just a few more minutes, Ambassador, of your time, when you look at Lebanon, how optimistic are you in seeing Hezbollah fully de-armed and disbanded as the Trump administration has demanded?
I'm really probably more optimistic than most people because I'm very close to it. I'm in the middle of dealing with pieces of that. And I can see that this could happen. Now, is it fragile? You bet it is. The big challenge is ramping up the capacity of the Lebanese armed forces, the LAF, and ramping down the power and influence of Hezbollah. If Iran and its regime were to collapse, then that means that the funnel of money and weaponry to Hezbollah collapses with it. It would accelerate the capacity of Lebanon to free itself, get out from under the shackles of this hideous snake of Hezbollah. That would be a wonderful thing. It would help move Lebanon forward. And I think that it's so important for people from the outside to look and say, the Lebanese really deserve better. They're beautiful people. They want to be free. They want their kids to grow up with a sense of security and safety. Israel does not want to take anything in the terms of real estate in southern Lebanon. They don't want it. They just want to protect themselves. So the faster that we can get to that place where Hezbollah isn't threatening Israelis on the north, Israel is able to pull back and just simply defend its own border, and that's it. And Lebanon will have freedom, freedom of movement, freedom of future, that they don't have as long as Hamas is there to take its ugly head and stick it into the life of the Lebanese people.
Yes, I think that history certainly proves that right. And final question on Syria. We are seeing a historic integration agreement between the Syrian government and the Kurdish-led SDF, effectively ending autonomous Kurdish rule and returning much of the northeast to Damascus control. From a U.S. strategic perspective, does this vindicate the Trump approach of less direct intervention? Or is it, as some would argue, a strategic defeat for the Kurds and a window for Iranian and Russian influence?
Well, I don't think anybody would be happy to see Iranian and other influences come into the region, certainly not in Syria. I really believe, if you look at this, that there's a push, and al-Shara is being told very clearly that there's a limit on the U.S. willingness to support his leadership. And it involves protecting these minorities, whether it's the Kurds, the Christians, the Alawites, or the Druze. So if he wants there to be Western support, and it appears he does, because that's his best path forward, then he's going to have to be diligent in showing good faith in protecting the minorities and begin to get control. I think he has command of the forces, may not have control of all the forces, and hopefully he will get both command and control, and that army will be responsive to what he orders them to do, and that includes protection of the minorities.
Well, and I think a lot of people in the region would be very happy to hear you say that, Ambassador. And so my last question is, U.S. forces, as you know, are reportedly beginning a drawdown from key installations in northeast Syria amid government gains and evolving ceasefires. Given simultaneous renewed U.S. air and drone strikes against ISIS remnants, how should U.S. policy balance a reduced footprint with preventing an ISIS resurgence? And what do you think the risk of a withdrawal poses to regional stability?
If there is increased activity as a result of any U.S. drawdown, I think it would be one that would be met with an extraordinary sense of displeasure, possibly even to the point of re-upping those troops back where they were. Nobody really wants that. Look, we'd all like for every country in the world to exercise its own sovereign will, to live the way it wants to. President Trump has said he's not trying to tell every other country what kind of government it's got to have and that it has to mirror ours. I think that's one of the smartest things the president has done. He has not said, look, everybody has to have a constitution like ours. Everybody has to do elections like we do. Everyone has to have a democracy. He's not said that. He said, look, people are free to determine their future, but you can't slaughter your own people and us stand by and do nothing. And especially if those people you're slaughtering are our allies and our friends and people that have been helpful to us, we simply are not going to abandon those people. So it's sort of in the hands of those, like in this case, al-Shara. He will make the decision as to what kind of future the people of Syria have. And let's hope he makes a good decision and that he can take leadership. He can shake off his past, which is, let's just say, not ideal, and can prove himself to be a new person leading a new country to a new and better future for all of its people.
Well, amen to that. And Ambassador, as you know, yesterday, President Trump joined the National Prayer Breakfast. He gave a real message of faith to the United States. And so I was wondering if, as a final thought, you might share your own thoughts on that topic.
Well, as you know, Ellie, I'm a person of faith. I believe that my life belongs to God. It's not mine. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve. But I'm also mindful that whatever I'm able to do in this earth, it's not because I've done something for God. It's that he has done something for me. And I always reflect that my hope to get to heaven is not because I say, God, look at what I've done for you, because I've done nothing for God that he needed. But I look at it and say, God, what you have done for me, and by your grace, you still, knowing everything there is to know about me, you still love me. And I find that remarkable. And it's why I cling to my faith as the center of my life.
Well, we're so grateful to you for joining us, Ambassador, and we'll hope to have you back again soon.
Thank you so much, Ellie. Great to be with you. Take care.